And we're live. What's up, guys? Happy Thursday. Hopefully, your Wednesday went off to a wonderful start in real life and DFS. We're here to talk about DFS and not your real life, so that's up to you guys. Click the thumbs up button if you don't mind, and let's get after it.
Yeah, excited to break this short, small four-gamer with you with a bunch of decent plays on it.
Oof, I'm going to argue with you. I don't think there is a bunch of decent plays.
Well, I think there's a bunch of decent plays, not a bunch of good plays.
I still think you're playing a little fast and loose with the word decent. We'll get into our favorites, but it was a tough one to look through, which is why it is a rare day where I'm really digging on the GPP ones and trying to play the ownership game more than normal. I think it's going to be a fun one. I think 300 does real damage tonight.
Yeah, so I'm excited to break it down with you for sure.
All right, let's get after it. So today's show on Thursday is brought to you by our boys over at Drafters. If you like to do snake drafts, and who doesn't, and if you enjoy the drafting process, all day long you could do live snake drafts over at Drafters. We are trying to get the community a little bit more fired up about beginning back to doing all of these daily drafts that we used to do on there. I think a couple of things that people should really like one, for my money, it's just easier money than DraftKings or FanDuel. And that could be a nice thing. These days, there's, guys like us and a million other people out there like us. There's so much information out there for DraftKings or FanDuel that there isn't going to be nearly as much for other types of websites. So I think you can find yourself a niche over right there. Join our Drafters Facebook group below. Come draft with us. And I'm willing to take on anybody for reasonable amounts of money. If you're trying to play me for $1,000, I won't be doing that. But we are here to take on contestants all day long if you're interested.
Let's get it, man. We got our Discord ready. So we got nice things coming along right now.
Yes, and if you're hearing this as a lifetime 5-pack member and you have not seen the email, hit me up in my DM so I can get you the link to join the Discord. Once we get all the lifetime members rolling, we'll switch over to monthly and everything else. Speaking of promotions that we are running, $15 off the NBA package today, guys. That price gets you everything, the rest of the year and the playoffs. Very, very, very affordable. Playoffs will be a moneymaker like it always is, and let's make ourselves some money in the regular season to boot. Get that price today. Day passes are up. Subscribe to the station if you're new to it. Let's move over to the cash game locks. Let's start with Anthony Davis. I know a point that you've pounded home over the years, which remains to be true, is even though Anthony Davis isn't really a better play at 8,900 than he is at 9,100 because that price point is nominal, just the fact that he's under 9K is going to create even more chalkiness than he would have been if he was a couple $100 more. We all know Detroit's not very good. And you're going to get a very, very popular Anthony Davis today at this price tag against a team that really struggles to maintain people within the, close to the hoop. Coming off of a loss, expect a motivated Lakers team tonight. That was a really good game. Great comeback. AD scores a bucket late to put him ahead, and then Tobias Harris with a nice little late two-pointer to give the Lakers a loss today. So you should get a motivated Lakers team. There are not a lot of smash plays today either, so I think this is another reason Anthony Davis will be really, really popular. And if you want to hear the case for the GPP fade, watch the members-only video. We went through it in great detail today. We do think there is a case for it. But in cash games, and if you like them, just play them in GPPs too. I think he'll be real popular today.
Yeah, I think he'll get a ton of love. People already really want to play AD. Like you mentioned, now under 9K. That's going to draw even the casual buyers just automatically locking him in. It's hard not to play him here. He's in a really good spot against Detroit. Game can remain competitive and he gets his full allotment of minutes. It's hard to see him not at least being good at this price tag with upside for much more. Like you mentioned, there are cases to be made for fade tournaments. And if you want to hear those, check out our members only video, sign up for a day pass, whatever it is. And if you're making one lineup, if you're playing cash games, just lock AD in and move on.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing for people to grasp on and why AD will be popular is you're used to him being $10,000. Well, he has not been a 10K guy this year. He's actually priced the way that he should be. But we all have years of experience of playing Anthony Davis. And other than those locker room games, which just haven't been nearly as big of a thing in LA as they were in New Orleans, he's just supposed to be more than 8,900 in all of our minds.
Well, for me, it's like, do you take more into what's happened this year than what's happened in the previous 6 years?
Well, I don't know. That's a weird question, right? Like he's on a different team with LeBron James. They've been kind of watching his minutes. Like I agree. In my mind, Anthony Davis is $10,000. So when I see 8,900, it is really difficult in my mind not to be like he's way too cheap. But then you're like, well, they have new players this year, right? They have Montrezl Harrell. They have Marcus Gasol. They have Dennis Schroeder. Maybe they are trying to keep their superstars a little bit lighter and not having them do everything for the team this year. So based on this year's evidence, he's a 44.8 points per game player. But in my mind, even though I know that, he's still $10,000 to me.
Yeah, for sure. It just, there is no right answer to the question for me. And I get those points. Like, I can't just disregard everything that's happened in the past 2 years because there's a 15-game sample size of him averaging 45 DK points, which isn't even that low. So I get it, but I also think that it's a very, very risky fade.
For sure. In a bad matchup, I would love it more. You know what I mean? Like, because I still think even in a rough spot, people would go to him right here. But because it's Detroit, that's what to me, which makes the fade harder.
Agreed, wholeheartedly.
All right, so moving over to GPPs, one of your little pet projects here, Kelly Oubre. I mean, ever since the 3-ball started to fall about 2 weeks ago, he's just, outside of that game against Utah, where everybody on Golden State was, straight up just garbage, he's been a lot better. It's amazing how making some outside shots can make your game. Take note, Giannis and Ben Simmons.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I'm in another one of the Discords I'm in. One of my buddies messaged like after Oubre got picked up his early second foul. Oubre just sucks now, and it's crazy. And I was just waiting for him to come back in, and he absolutely balled. He only played 24 minutes, still put up 40 DK points. He's playing well, like you mentioned, ever since he started a few threes. He's over a bit at 6,400, but that's the theme of this slate. A lot of guys on this slate are overpriced. You've got a lot of guys between 5 and K that are usually like a few hundred or 500 to 1,000 cheaper than they are tonight, and Oubre fits that mold. However, like you mentioned, he's been good since he started hitting some threes. Tonight he gets a matchup he's had circled. He was very vocal about being disappointed getting trading from Phoenix after he finally felt like it was his home, was caught off guard to be dealt, wants to stick it to his old team. And again, I'm not using him because of that, but on a slate where we don't have a ton of great plays, I don't hate that extra feather in his cap.
I am smiling ear to ear right now because I am just chuckling thinking about how quickly the NBA changes, that any rational human being can be upset about being traded from Phoenix to Golden State.
That's so true. Good point.
The NBA changes so fast, so fast. All right, we're going to move over to a mutual favorite play from the day. And I want to be very, 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 very clear on this one. Matt only plays GPPs. And for today, I prefer GPPs because I don't think a lot of the chalk is in a great spot necessarily. So I usually think ownership percentages are something that maybe we spend too much time on. I disagree with that today. So I'm going against the grain a little bit from the way that I normally play. So we're going to talk about Kyle Kuzma, but I want to reiterate, this is only for GPPs. And it's also a little bit more of a long shot. I actually think that my long shot that we'll do next is less of a long shot than Kyle Kuzma. But we wanted to talk about him because we both like him today for a few reasons. One, unlike almost everybody else on this slate, Kyle Kuzma is really inexpensive for who he is. He is coming off, I believe, a 5-game stretch now where he just hasn't been very good. He didn't play much last night. With the Lakers being perpetually down by like 10 points last night, they really rode the Stars very, very heavy. Kuzma played, I think, his lowest minute total in recent memory. So in a game against an inferior Detroit team, heads up, the 76ers are better than the Pistons. I do think there is a real chance that the Lakers could put the smackdown early coming off a loss, that they, give run to some of their other good players who don't get to play bigger minutes. Even though Bron is great on back-to-backs, I don't think it's crazy to think that they, temper the expectations on some of the more veteran players today, which makes me really like Kyle Kuzma and GPPs. I know we're all prisoners of what happened recently, but I challenge everybody to do a real simple evaluation process. Simply click on the game log. Go back about 10 days or whatever it was and take a look at how Kyle Kuzma had been playing for the Los Angeles Lakers. I think this is a great spot for him today to kind of get his confidence back, to get his production back. And if he can get going early on a day that if they can get a lead early on a really bad Pistons team, I think it's a good opportunity for the best team in basketball to let their stars coast a little bit and give run to some of their backup players like Kyle Kuzma. He is a real candidate for like 7X today. He is very capable. Kyle Kuzma is a good player. Now, this could change if somebody sits and it becomes chalky, but all the game log watchers are going to be turned off by the fact that he has been terrible for the last week and a half.
You gotta like that he's going back to his town here. He's got 4 or 5. He's in 4 of the past 5 times he's played Detroit. He's got 30 plus DK points. And again, not using him because of that, but doesn't hurt. Kuzma and AD kind of fit together in that AD is going to be supreme chalk while fading AD and playing Kuzma. I mean, besides the fact that they're at massive different price points, I think gives you a ton of leverage because if this game gets a little sloppy or gets out of hand, like you mentioned, and Kuzma ends up getting a ton of run, he could be the highest dollar for dollar play on the slate while also hurting AD's score because if Kuzma's getting good run, AD probably is not.
You've heard us say this a lot lately, but tell yourself a story. And again, we've both been very vocal about this. The Pistons, while being terrible, I mean, they're awful, have actually done a really good job this year of staying in games. I watched them play Milwaukee a few times, and I know Milwaukee rolled on them real bad once. But other than that, you kept thinking the Bucks were going to put them away, but they hung around. To quote John Malkovich from Rounders, hanging it around. It is what they do all the time. So as much as I feel like the Lakers should roll here, it's not necessarily true. The flip side of that, you do have a pissed off Lakers team coming off of a rough loss last night, and the talent discrepancy between these two teams is massive. Jeremy Grant is the best player for the Pistons, but he'd be like, what, the 4th or 5th best player for the Los Angeles Lakers? So there is a massive talent discrepancy on these two teams. But I love the idea of giving the Lakers the credit to get up early in this one and checking out a guy like Kuzma versus a guy like AD.
For sure. No doubt about it.
All right, so let's move over to more of the long shots of the day. So my long shot's going to be James Wiseman of the Golden State Warriors. I actually think he's a pretty safe play overall, but by ownership standards, I think he's going to be a little bit more of a long shot. So I do think when it comes to the game of NBA, there was a couple of guys yesterday in the first game that I talked about Jeremy Lamb all day long. But the moment that Sabonis was starting and Lamb got moved to the starting unit, I literally had zero interest. The flip side of that was Cody Zeller, who went from maybe he might be okay to once he was a starter and you kind of thought he would see closer to starter minutes, he became a guy that, liked a ton. So I do think checking out guys starting versus non-starting is always an interesting conversation. I like Wiseman better in the second unit. If you watched him play the last couple of games, one, there's a motivation factor. He thinks of himself as the number 2 overall pick, as a guy who should be a starter. However, when you're not playing with Curry and Wiggins and you're running more of your time with the backups and maybe now you're the best player on the second unit, your usage and just production with this team can be significantly greater. I think the demotion to the second unit might turn some people off. I actually love it for Wiseman, who didn't play a lot of minutes in the second game, but we saw him return to more of a normal minute allotment last night, and he was fantastic. So I like him a lot today.
Yeah, there's a lot to like at this price tag. Again, a lot of guys on this slate are priced up. Wiseman's not. Coming off an awesome game last night, scored 25 real-life points. I do think Kuzma's much more of a long shot than Wiseman. Not that, Wiseman's some lock because, like you mentioned, he's not getting a ton of love. I like this call a lot in all formats.
Yeah, and, he was the second pick for a reason. That's because there's actual talent there, right? Like, we'll talk about some guys throughout this slate that are going to get bigger run and have opportunity. But he's a guy who actually has the ability to become a really good NBA player. Not saying he is yet, but he shows flashes. And, again, he was an early pick for a reason because there is a lot of talent right there.
Agreed.
All right, next up. So your long shot is going to be Lou Williams. So I actually wanted to talk him over for a few things today. Like, one, is there any chance, do you think that maybe like Father Time just caught up to him and he's just dusted? Or is it more of like he's just not getting along with the Clippers and they just like refuse to give him his normal run that he saw for years?
I think it's the latter. I don't think it's that he's just lost his game. I just don't see that. When I watch him, he doesn't look amazing, but he doesn't look much different than he's looked, in past years. For me, I think it's more that like he's fallen out of favor potentially with the Clippers as a whole.
So here's a question for you. If you're the Clippers and you're done with Lou Williams, because by all evaluation of the Clippers, they just don't really seem to have any love for him currently. Why not feature him as like trade bait? Because I feel like this is a guy who could have some value on some other teams, especially if he's still the Lou Williams, who, again, he's had a long career, right? I think this is like his 15th year. He's been playing in the NBA since he was like 19 years old. If he's still got something left to give, like this is a guy who could be an asset to a lot of NBA teams. And now that you're without Beverly and Kawhi and Paul George, do you think there's any chance, like, give him good run today? Show him off. If you don't want him, let somebody else give you something for him because you are not currently constructed to beat the Lakers.
I don't think that's crazy. I also don't think it'll be crazy if he just plays more minutes because they need his offense here. They lost that last game against the Hawks. He was really bad in the first half. I think he was like 0 for 5 shooting, at under 5 DK points, I'm pretty sure. And then in the second half, warmed up. Didn't do anything amazing, but finished his night with 11, 3, and 3. I think he takes that positive momentum and, plays well in the first half here. Again, I think it's really risky. He only played 22 minutes last time out. And if he's not playing well in his first run, I think that not that he gets benched. I think he doesn't play a ton of minutes then. And he really needs to play well when he's out there to earn more minutes. However, he's a guy that we know. If he does get more minutes, he's got big upside here. If his first 2 threes go in, he's not going to be shy about shooting it. He's a guy we know that has had big games at this price tag. And it is really risky. He is, however, considering how DK priced a lot of guys on this slate, specifically the Clippers, he's still very affordable by that standard. And there's a lot of meat on the bone for upside here. Again, I look at this kind of like we said about Enes Kanter, very, very boom bustish. But on this slate in particular, I'm interested, again, as a long shot in tournaments. I do view Lou Williams and Kuzma on a similar long shot type page. Do you agree with that?
Different picks for me. Yeah, boom bust. I don't know what to make of the Clippers situation. I was a little flabbergasted that he got very little run last game, only played 22 minutes. And the same thing with Marcus Morris. I thought he'd be a little bit more of a staple of their lineup. But they played Coffee and they didn't even play Patrick Patterson. I didn't really understand the method of the madness of the Clippers the other day. So I don't think coming off of a loss to the Hawks that it's at all crazy that they're going to change things up. You know what would change everything about Lou Williams? If all of a sudden Man comes off the bench and he's the starter today. Then he becomes auto chalk, right?
Yeah, for sure. It was crazy to see Coffee come in before Marcus Morris.
Yeah, and Coffee's awful. This is not a guy that you're like, oh, maybe they see something. He's just not really a good NBA player right now. So I didn't understand why they didn't even really seem to care for winning that game.
I agree with you. And it does make it even more interesting here that they play tomorrow. So,
right?
Something to know. I mean, again, Lou Williams is a real long shot here. I'm not saying that I'm going to lock him in. If I'm making one lineup, I wouldn't use him. But like I mentioned, if he gets hot when he first comes, he's going to play. I mean, it's not like he's not going to play because they don't have a ton of bodies. So we know he's going to get at least the 20-ish minutes that he played last time. If he gets hot early and if he's shooting well, maybe that increases to 25, 26, and he's shooting well. So that's where the upside lies. But he's way risky. Whoever thought Lou Williams would be this risky with all these guys out?
Well, and Reggie Jackson played awesome last game. He was fantastic. I mean, I watched almost that entire game, and Reggie Jackson looked like the guy who, Detroit signed whatever it was 4 or 5 years ago that they thought could be, a legit starting point guard / borderline, almost all-star type of talent. And then it never really came to fruition. He had injuries. He was in and out of the lineup. Detroit wasn't very good for all those years, but he played like that. All that being said, and I kind of like Reggie Jackson today because I don't think a lot of people want to pay that money for him. I am also not surprised if Reggie Jackson plays like a pile of rabbit turds, is not good, and because the Clippers are coming off a loss, that all of a sudden Lou Williams comes in and he's the guy who gets the real good run today. So it's an interesting game to break down. I don't trust much of anything from the Clippers today, but that's where a lot of the potential upside for me today and why I like GPPs more than cash games. There's not a lot I trust on this slate, and I love the idea of fading almost any chalk on the slate.
And that's another reason why I love the new format of our shows, bringing up these long shots, because it gives us the ability to talk about these guys that we in the past wouldn't have been able to on these public shows.
Yeah, for sure. So I think it's an interesting breakdown today. I think it's very, very, I know we say that most days, but I do find today's slate very, very interesting. And you guys know, a lot of times I subscribe to the keep it simple, stupid theory of play the best plays, let the ownership fall where it is because you have a lot of different guys. I don't subscribe to that theory today. I'm way different than I normally evaluate NBA DFS. As I was looking through what were projected to be earlier chalkier slots today, I'm flat out straight up Bellman today. I love fading chalk today.
It does remind me of a baseball slate where it's not even about that you love the others. It's always great if you can love the different pieces, but most of the time the chalk is the better play for a reason, and it's hard not to like the chalk. Today, I agree with you. Some of the chalky plays are kind of curious to me.
Yeah, I mean, like even last night, like
There was way too much. When the ownership like that gets so concentrated, I'm like, even if a guy is a good play, like there's merit to get off him, and I think you're going to see a lot of that tonight. Like, you saw like with and I'm not saying any of these guys were bad plays, but Kendrick Nunn 50%, Bam, you talked about 35%. When you get guys like that on a 12-game slate, I mean, the ownership that's when you start to really it matters, in my opinion.
Well, and the hard part obviously is going to be picking out who's going to be good and who's being bad. That's the name of the game. Like you look at the Suns last night. I thought Ayton was a good play, and I thought Cam Johnson was a sucker play. Well, I was right once and wrong once. They were both terrible. You know what I mean? Like that's the whole name of the game, trying to be right about all these things. And like you can put a feather in your cap that you thought Cam Johnson was a bad play, but you're also the guy who played DeAndre Ayton, and he was horrible.
I mean, no doubt. I'm thinking that I got the New Orleans and Washington game, and Ingram and Beal were very good, but Jeremy Grant was not good at all. And at 8K, I mean, again, he ended up salvaging from being not awful, but at 8K, you need more than 35.
Yeah, I don't know. It's fun when you can kind of break things down this way and take a look at them. Yesterday I made it pretty clear that by the time the write-up came out, I was doubling up at center with Cody Zeller and DeAndre Ayton. But I would have bet every dollar that I have access to in the world that DeAndre Ayton was going to outscore Cody Zeller. And Cody Zeller at whatever it was, less than half his price, absolutely just destroyed him. And those are the weird things that seem to happen more and more in the NBA with all these blowouts, teams getting really stacked with good players. It makes for an interesting discussion on a daily basis.
No doubt about it.
Cody Zeller outscores DeAndre Ayton. Never saw that one coming.
We just got a bunch of news, just FYI for this slate. Like basically everyone on Miami is questionable, and LeBron and AD are questionable.
So we didn't get any news because exactly. LeBron and AD are questionable every single slate.
Yep.
That's getting annoying. We brought this up for a while yesterday. Like, especially on a back-to-back against a bad team, like you do want to believe in your mind that they are truly questionable. But LeBron has been questionable, I think, every game this year. And it's just stupid. It's like, just come on. Like, really? Like, why do you even have to give him the questionable tag?
It makes a mockery of like the whole questionable system.
Yeah, what is it? Are we the Patriots now all of a sudden where everybody's questionable all week, every single week?
I thought this was supposed to be like cleared up a little bit coming into this year. Like the injury reports were supposed to be better, like more confirmed. It doesn't seem that way at all.
Right. And part of this is, and we've joked about it, these NBA teams don't care about fantasy sports players and sports bettors. But let's not pretend like fantasy sports and sports bettors don't bring in a lot of interest to these sports. And they should give a little bit of credence, and not just like, me and you get pissed. Like everybody listening to this, all 1,000 of you guys, all the thousands of people who do sports betting and fantasy stuff, like we do help keep these leagues going, and they should not acquiesce to us, but they should give us a little something.
Agreed. They should at least want us to stay interested. They don't want to lose. I mean, agreed. I wholeheartedly agree. That's just business 101.
Like we watch the DraftKings contest get smaller as the year goes because people who are more casual players of this stuff get annoyed by it, and better information and not, like the Sixers the other day. What was that? Everybody's questionable, but I think they're going to play. Like, how do you not know an hour before the game? And why would you even come out and say anything?
You're the head coach. Like, yeah, why would you even say that? It's just, oh, God, it's really frustrating, especially as us who are trying to put out content. It's very, very frustrating.
No doubt about it, guys. All right, everybody, best of luck today, and we'll holler at you guys soon.
Thanks, guys.